I pushed his office door open and was surprised to see Stanley there. Confused, I asked, "What's happening here?" Kingsley laughed heartily, saying that Stanley sold me out. I knocked at my parents' door that day and was greeted by the judgmental look on my mother's face. "What are you doing here, Ada?" she asked unpleasantly. I greeted her and went straight into the house. "There is nothing good about the money, no, Adobe. What are you doing here with that big bag packed?" "Mommy, at least welcome me first now. Eh? This is my father's house and I am no stranger here," I replied my mom, whose anger was already rising. "Metrionogide, will you answer my question?" So I sat my mom down and narrated everything I was going through for the past 5 years, emphasizing that I had endured for that long and did not bring it to their attention because I did not want to embarrass the family like she warned me not to. But I couldn't endure anymore because the abuses were getting too much to handle. "Is that all?" my mother asked, rather surprised. My eyebrow arched in disbelief, looking at her. She continued, "I asked, is that all? Was he beating you?" I answered, "No, he wasn't. But he was abusing me emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise. Just that he didn't lay his hands physically on me. And I do not see why this is a valid question to ask right now, mommy." My mother was not having it at all. To her, I was just being selfish. She asked how I even thought it was okay to jeopardize my father's position and future aspirations by demanding a divorce from the vice governor's son. "Listen, Ada, you are going back to your husband's house to ask him for forgiveness and hope he takes you back. Quit being a child and grow up. Do you think I was always this happy in my marriage? But I stayed back just because I wasn't taught to leave when it gets tough. You have to endure through marriage. Blah, blah, blah." Honestly, that was what I was hearing at that point because why would a mother tell her child to fall inside a clear pit in daylight? My mother was a hard nut to crack. And to be frank, I wasn't planning on cracking her. I was only there because I wasn't ready to pay for a whole apartment for myself yet. Not until the divorce was finalized. I was done with dancing to anybody's music. It was time to dance to mine. I left my mom and went straight into my bedroom and shut the door. "Home sweet home indeed," I muttered under my breath in sarcasm. In order to avoid thinking too much and falling into unnecessary depression because of my mom, I decided to look for something to get engaged in, something that will help me unwind and take my focus off the drama in my life. So, I got dressed and left the house. That day, as I walked past an art studio, I remembered how much I had loved to paint as a kid, and I decided to go in and have a look. I met something that really caught my attention. A very handsome guy, whom I later learned his name to be Stanley, was lost in a world of his own, making magic with beautiful colors. I stood there for over 5 minutes, smiling and watching him to the point that I got embarrassed when he said, "You're welcome to join me, ma'am." I declined and said I was only there to register and would want to know how their classes were grouped. When he turned around, our eyes locked for a good 10 seconds. I felt a tiny spark in my belly, but I subdued it immediately. No more dramas, I thought to myself. I went ahead to register for the group classes that held every other day. However, I refused to tell him my surname so that he does not go searching for my background on the internet. Soon after, I started classes. Seeing that I was a total novice at painting, Stanley would come to my side to render me extra help from time to time. He always does this in spite of all the ladies that were flocking around him. However, I wasn't there for chit chats. I knew I needed to focus because I can't be running from one drama just to fall into another. And so I avoided small talks with Stanley. You see, Stanley was a hustling Igbo boy who finished school and got some loan to pursue his dreams of owning an art studio. He started with his best friend Ozo, but unfortunately, he was a victim of Ozo's scam and theft because he took more than half of their earnings and eloped to abroad, leaving Stanley stranded and in a huge debt. In fact, his money lenders were after his life, so he was actively looking for funds. One fateful evening, Stanley met me buying suya at a malam shop in the street and walked up to say hi. We chatted for a bit and he offered to walk me home. We had fun that night, walking and gisting while eating suya. Unknowingly to us, we were being monitored by my husband's security guy. On getting to my house, I hugged and bade Stanley good night, and that was when I saw the security man. He was looking in our direction with so much interest as if he had a mission. What am I saying? Of course he had a mission, which I was going to learn about later. He had followed Stanley back to his studio and in fact approached him. He told Stanley that his oga, Mr. Kingsley Ebo, whom Stanley did not know to be my husband as at then, wanted to see him for a business proposal, and he dropped his card. Stanley, confused, decided to go see him the next day. So on arrival, Stanley, filled with anxiety of why the vice governor's son wanted to see him, sat down waiting for Mr. Ebo. Shortly after, Mr. Ebo joined him with a cruel smug on his face. "So you are the brat that has been sleeping with my wife?" he questioned Stanley. "Excuse me, sir?" Stanley asked in confusion. "The lady you were with last night, she is my wife." "Oh, she didn't tell you?" Mr. Ebo said. "Wow, sir. Forgive me, but she's just one of my students. I have nothing with her, I promise." Stanley pleaded. "What if you can?" "What if I can what, sir?" inquired Stanley, even more confused. "She's a very pretty lady, and I know you have interests in her. So, what if I give you the permission to date my wife for a huge sum of money? Would you accept? All you need to do is tell me your price," Mr. Kingsley said, smiling cruelly. Stanley could not believe his ears. Was this man out of his mind or something? He thought to himself. So he decided to name an outrageous fee, hoping that it would make him change his mind. 10 million naira, he said. Kingsley immediately replied, "Done. But on one condition. You have to get me intimate pictures of videos of both of you, and you have 3 weeks. You get half the money now, and the rest after you must have done your own part of the deal." Stanley's jaw dropped in surprise. Why would someone be willing to give out such a huge amount of money to see implicative photos of his wife? But indeed, I can understand. It was very tempting, and Stanley's lenders were on his neck. And he was given an ultimatum to pay up in 3 days' time or his studio will be taken from him. So I can't blame him for what happens next. Can I think about it, sir?" "You have 5 minutes," Kingsley answered. "Okay, deal," Stanley said. Kingsley smiled cruelly and said, "Good choice. I'm going to provide you with a camera for the job. Here is 5 million naira cash. See you in 3 weeks. And Stanley, you better not fuck this up." Stanley left the office with mixed feelings. He went straight to his friend's apartment to tell him everything. His friend, Dogo, was hyped and over the moon. To him, This was the simplest business anybody could do for such a huge paycheck. But he was taken aback by Stanley's sad countenance, and so he asked, "What is wrong with you, Oga? Why you no dey happy?" "Oh boy, I like this guy. I feel really bad about hurting her this way," Stanley replied. "You dey talk rubbish oh," Dogo replied, rather angry. He called his friend stupid for not realizing this immense opportunity out of poverty. He listed all the existing problems that Stanley had, including his lenders that were ready to rough him physically and also take his studio from him. After everything, Stanley decided to try and accomplish his own part of the deal to save himself. So, he went on a mission to hunt and make me fall for him. And me, oblivious of all this drama at the time, had stopped coming to the studio for a while. I was very busy dealing with the legal procedures I had to deal with to make sure I dissolved any ties I had with Kingsley. When he did not see me for a week, Stanley decided to come looking for me at my house. On getting there, my mother opened the door and inquired who he was. He introduced himself as my painting coach and said he came to see if I was okay as I was no longer coming to classes. My mother bashed him, warning him to mind his business, as I was a married woman already and nothing would ever work out between us. She shut the door on him, leaving him confused. As Stanley was about leaving, I pulled up in front of my gates and was very surprised to see him there. As I came down from my car, I asked what he was doing at my house. He said he was worried that he hadn't seen me in class for days, so he decided to pop in and check on me. I was genuinely very tired and stressed that day, so I snapped. "Listen, Kingsley, I am not a child, and our relationship is solely professional. I do not appreciate you coming to my house to check on me, please. Thank you." Before he would even say anything, I walked out on him and went straight into my house. Stanley went home that day feeling more confused and sad. I, on my part, soon realized that I was too harsh on him for being a caring teacher. So, I went to the studio the next day to apologize. He was reluctant to forgive me at first, but after I gave him my reasons for snapping at him, and he saw how genuinely sorry I was, he forgave me, but gave me a condition that I went on a date with him, and so I agreed. I found Stanley even more interesting and fascinating during our first date together. That was when he opened up to me about his backstabbing friend Ozo and how he had been struggling to repay his loans. Stanley was very willing to let me in on things about his life, but I simply shrugged it off when he asked about mine. Honestly, I was very relieved and glad when he did not pressure me to say things about myself. We had a great time that night, and it bettered our new dimension of friendship. We started having private classes, and my painting started to improve rapidly. I found myself smiling at the thought of him. He made me really happy and forget my worries temporarily. One day, after our private classes, I was really hungry and wanted to leave, but Stanley opted to cook for me at his house, which was close by. At first, I refused, but followed him after he insisted. Thereafter, he made some horrible pasta for me. We gisted some more and laughed about his terrible cooking. Then suddenly, our hands touched in a very magical way, and he held it, drew me close to himself, and looked into my eyes so sensually. I could feel his eyes piercing my soul. My heart was beating very fast. I knew I wanted to, but somehow, last minute, when his head was already tilted as he was coming in for a kiss, I stopped him, saying I had to be somewhere for a meeting, and left. On Stanley's part, he revealed to his friend Dogo that he could not bring himself to keep his part of the deal as he was beginning to fall even more in love with me as days went by. Dogo laughed heartily and mockingly at Stanley. Guy, you be mumu. How can you forfeit 10 million naira for a girl? Eve. Ha! See, you better reset that brain of yours before it puts you inside danger. Your time is ticking. Oh. This is week 2, almost over. Stanley was seriously battling with his conscience, so he resolved to remove the camera he had mounted in his room and not to go ahead with the plan anymore. At the beginning of week 3, Kingsley's security guy visited Stanley again in his studio and gave him a very stern reminder and warning that his boss hated to be disappointed, and so he should better stay focused and complete his assignment, or else. Stanley was left in a fix once again. How was he going to tackle this situation so as not to anger Mr. Kingsley, especially now that he had refunded his lenders with part of the payment? On my own part, I had a very heated argument with my mom that night. She started her nagging after I got back, and at first I tried to ignore her as usual. But she flung open my room door and went on and on about how I must go back to my husband's house and would not bring shame to the family by following small boys. It hits me that this woman I call my mother does not give 2 cents about me or how I feel. So I let out my feelings that night, calling her selfish and insensitive for not caring about I and my sisters for once in her life. I even brought up the very topic we never spoke about in our home. You see, we were 3 sisters and I used to be the second born. But my immediate elder sister, Chisom, was born way before us. She, however, died during childbirth solely because my mother talked her into vaginal delivery against the doctor's advice. To my mom, this was supposed to make her appear worthy and strong in her husband's eyes. How cruel of you to have always chosen your own selfish reasons and opinions over your children's own. Now, you're pushing me into the hands of a tyrant just because I should endure and not bring shame to the family, the same way you pushed Sister Chisom to go against the doctor's advice. I shouted back at my mom that night. On mentioning Chisom, my mom slapped me angrily. Hot tears escaped my eyes, and I simply picked my bag and left the house that night. I went to Stanley's house, and when I got there, he welcomed me with open arms. I cried in those arms for a good 5 minutes, and he just let me with no questions asked. When I was done, I went straight to his painting board and started painting furiously until I didn't know what to paint anymore. I dropped the brush and turned to see him gazing at me softly. So I rushed to him and started kissing him hungrily. He kissed me back for a bit before stopping. I was confused. I thought this was what you wanted, I asked him. Yes, I want this more than anything, but not in this mood. You seem to be very vulnerable right now, and I wouldn't want to take advantage of that, Stanley said softly. I assured him that being with him was the only thing I wanted that night. So we continued kissing, and the rest was history. I had a very peaceful night rest that night, smiling on his chest as I slept. When I woke up, I realized I was a bit late for my lawyer's appointment, and so I hurriedly left after kissing my new lover goodbye. When I was done with my lawyer, I got a text message from my husband, and it was a picture. My heart pounded so fast as I opened them, my jaw dropping as I scrolled through each picture. I was shaking, not knowing what to think or believe. I showed my lawyer, and I heard her mutter, "Shit, this doesn't look good at all." We proceeded to my car and drove straight to Kingsley's office. I pushed his office door open and was surprised to see Stanley there. Confused, I asked, "What's happening here?" Kingsley laughed heartily, saying that Stanley sold me out. I looked at Stanley like, "You would, the devil." I managed to ask him one question. Is this true? He stuttered, saying, "I can explain, Ada. It's complicated, but please know that I did not do this." I ignored him and stormed out of the office angrily. On Stanley's part, he was equally confused as he asked Kingsley how he got the pictures. Kingsley replied saying, "What sort of stupid question is that? Were you not the one that sent your friend Dogo or whatever his name is to bring me pictures this morning?" That was when Stanley remembered that he did not close his door with a key last night. And Dogo must have came around as they were supposed to meet at that same time I came to his house. So that was when he must have taken those pictures. "What?" Stanley exclaimed. "Please do not do anything with those pictures. I would refund you your money 100%. Just give me an hour." "What is this one saying? A deal is a deal. I do not need your wretched money. Just get out." Stanley ran off to his friend's place and met him at a bar outside his house. He first greeted him with a punch so blinding that Dogo fell to the floor. Stanley wanted to beat Dogo so badly but was stopped and held away by the people around. Stanley asked Dogo how he thought it was okay to take those pictures and submit to Kingsley. He stormed away angrily and went to the money lender he had already settled earlier. He gave him a proposal to buy off his studio for that same amount he gave him. This was a sell-off, so the lender took the opportunity immediately. He gave Stanley the 5 million naira, which he added to the remaining 5 million naira balance Kingsley gave him, and returned the entire money back to Kingsley, telling him that their deal was off and that he should retrieve those pictures. But Kingsley did not want to hear it. He instead kicked him out of his office. Kingsley wanted to divorce me, but he wanted to do it his own way, the dirty, petty way. He wanted to make me look like the bad guy, so he threatened to release those implicating images in order to shame me and my family. But I knew the man I married. I knew he was not going to go down easy, so I was prepared. I had recorded a few clips of his verbal abuses toward me, the very dirty ones, and kept for times like this. So when my lawyer showed him those clips, he was shocked. He did not believe I was capable of fighting dirty. Additionally, he was given two options: to quietly sign the divorce papers, giving me a good percentage of his properties, and to delete those images of me and Stanley for good, or to go to court with me and fight it out. Of course, his lawyer advised him to take the first option. And so that was how I got my freedom from the tyrant I once called my husband. Meanwhile, Stanley kept reaching out to me, but to no avail. I was not giving him audience at all. I blocked him on all social media, and I surely was not picking up his calls. I felt really betrayed and heartbroken and needed some time away from all the drama because, trust me, it was a lot. A few weeks later, as I was shopping in a mall, someone touched me from behind, and when I turned, it was Dogo, Stanley's friend. We exchanged pleasantries, and he offered to buy me lunch, saying he had a lot to unveil to me. So I accepted. While at it, Dogo opened my eyes about a lot of things, from how Stanley's lenders were threatening to kill him because of the loan he owed, to how he was even being reluctant to accept the evil deal from Kingsley. He concluded by saying that Stanley had in fact removed the camera and was not going to fulfill his own part of the deal because he was starting to fall deeply in love with me. I thought I was being a good friend by taking those pictures because I knew how badly he needed the money. But now, I know how badly I hurt the both of you. Can you believe that Stanley sold his studio and paid Kingsley back every dime? That guy really loves you, Ada. Just please forgive him and give him a chance, Dogo explained. I was truly surprised that Stanley did all that. So where is he now? I asked Dogo. He traveled to Onitsha, his hometown. He said he needed some space and time to unwind. Okay, you're going to help me locate there. We have a journey to make, I told Dogo. So we got ready the next day and traveled to surprise Stanley. He was amazed to see us as I rushed to hug and kiss him deeply. I apologized for not allowing him to explain himself to me and for all he had to go through. Stanley forgave me, and when it was time, we went back to Lagos. I helped Stanley get back on his feet by buying back the studio, and we became business partners. My mother, who soon realized her mistakes, apologized to I and my sister for treating us cruelly all our lives. I'm still healing from all the trauma, and that is why I'm here. My name is Ada, and this is my story. Moral lessons. I hope this story has taught you a thing or two. As parents or caregivers, we should strive to listen to our children or words attentively and put their needs over everything else. The more we listen and encourage them to speak up, the more they are willing to tell us more. And if you're the one going through tough and abusive relationship, I hope you find the courage, like Ada, to break free. And I hope your story also has a happy ending. We've come to the end of this story, and we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did creating it. If you have, please subscribe to this channel. It is totally free. It is simply a way of supporting us and encouraging us to create more wonderful stories for you. Also, share with your friends so that they can enjoy these lesson-filled wonderful stories. Thank you so much for always coming back to watch my videos. And to my subscribers, you guys are the real MVPs. I'm sending you all virtual hugs. And if you've not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Please click that subscribe button. Okay, until I come your way next time with another exciting story, remain blessed, my friends. Bye.